some things here.
All right, let's swap.
Okay. Streaming here. Looking good. Streaming here. Okay. Just checking on us being live everywhere. Okay. All right. All right. So it looks like we're streaming. Looks like we're live. Nobody's with me though. Let's see who we got. Hey, all right, we got a couple people watching. Hello, everybody. It's been a while. Been a minute. So I'm still playing the old Gaboury. Give me a what's up in the chat. I'm going to keep that open so I can keep an eye on that. Make sure if there's any questions coming up, we can answer those questions for you. All right. All right. Thanks, Ian. All right. Now we're rocking and rolling. Okay, you guys can see my screen. You can see me. You can see me. That's important. It's been long enough. I don't even know the last time I streamed. Honestly, I can't even remember the last time I've done this. So I think it's been probably, I want to say it's been almost 2 years. Maybe. I want to say around there. I'd say it's pretty crazy. Okay, well, I'm going to, I want to get back into streaming. I'm trying to get on here as much as we can. So I'm streaming today, and I'm streaming in 2 Fridays from now. So the goal will be, if I can, I'll stream every Friday at this normal time, which has been my normal time back in the day. So I'd like to get back into this, get connected with you all that are watching. So as you guys can see, it's not hard to guess what I'm making right here. I'm doing Luke Skywalker's X-Wing. The one thing, though, obviously I want to call out, if you haven't seen it, please check our Instagram. And also check our Facebook. We just showed ZBrush in action on the iPad and announced that it'll be coming to you in your iPad April of this year. So if you want to see just that in action, please check that out so that you can see that video. Pretty great stuff. So I'm sure you're all excited about that know what that is. So for me, I'm a big fan of having something physical in hand. If I'm trying to replicate something, in this case, we're trying to replicate, obviously, his X-Wing. So I have this in front of me. I always recommend doing something like this when you are working on an item, especially if you have the ability that you're replicating something. This is just a go-to. Instead of just images, having something physically, because then you can really look at it in different angles. And especially when you're focusing on something on the model, it's a good thing to have and take a look at, for sure. So this allows me to just really see things as a whole and see what I'm doing here. I can already see by looking at this, I feel like I'm a little bit off in here, but I also like to use the floor grid to bring in some reference images. That's a big thing for me to take a look at that, especially when you are doing something like this that already exists. You can get some imagery, you can get everything there that you need. So having some tech specs on this, which I do have a book for me. In fact, actually here on my, I can't get to my restreamer. Hold on, I gotta Yes, I did. I muted myself. Thanks, Ian. So when I hit that button, it muted me. Let's see if it's... Okay, that's not muting it. That's not muting it. Okay, so something muted accidentally. So everything I just said, you guys didn't hear. So congratulations. Welcome. I'm not muted now. You guys should be able to hear me. Should be good. Yes? I'm back. I see it bouncing. Didn't go deaf. It was definitely me. Am I back? You guys can hear me okay? I see. For me, it shows live. Okay. All right. So let's get looking at some of these other details in here, and taking a look at what I'm trying to do to build this, and take a look at it. So some really quick things that I like to do is work in stages for hard surface. And again, looking at this model and looking at some items, I would have some, again, some tech specs, which I did have some images, but I thought they were on my floor grid, but I've lost them. But what I mean by that is this, okay? Looking at the length of this, I like to start, as you can see, it's a low polygon, something that was easy to manipulate. It's also going to make it easy for me to make adjustments. So if I really need this to be longer, right, that's really easy to do. Okay, I can make it a lot longer because it's low polygon. So just make things a little bit easier for me to do that. So looking at this is something I might do really quick. Here's a little technique. So again, I'm looking at the actual one. There's a bunch of details on here that I want to get across. I don't think you guys are going to be able to see it on camera. Up this way. There you go. I don't think you can make it see it. Okay. So I'm going to look at this, and looking at this again, I say, all right, I've got this block out. Here's something that you could do is I'm going to duplicate this. All right. And then I'm going to turn the other one off. And I'm actually, this has got dynamics on right now. So I'm going to say, let's apply that. Let's get some density here. Technically, I don't really need too much density, but I'm going to get rid of the density completely, in the sense of just deleting the subdivision levels. And I want to kind of see, did I get this distance right? And so for me, secondary item is looking at all these little details and kind of like the paneling that is happening on this. Okay, I want to make sure, did I get this distance right? Okay. Let's see. Hold on. I'm catching on some of your things. Yeah. Good to see you, Peter. Thanks for joining. Okay. All right. So here's a quick thing I'm gonna do. I'm gonna switch to paint. I'm gonna switch to that. I'm gonna go with a little bit smaller draw size. I'm gonna fill it with the color white, and then I'm gonna flip my colors to black, and I'm gonna turn on Sculptris Pro. Right, and then I'm gonna say, really, my goal here is about making, like lines going down the actual the front of the plane here, front of the X-wing. So obviously, the smaller draw size we go, the smaller we're gonna get. But obviously, with Sculptris Pro, we're getting some clean lines. So I'm gonna say, okay, let's take a look at this design real quick. And it's kind of like just being a little bit dirty with this. I don't need to be 100% exact on this a little bit. It would be beneficial to be a little bit more exact. So I'm clicking, holding the shift key, right? And then I'm going to say, okay, this needs to go straight here, then straight across, okay? Then there is another little bit of one here coming across like that. And then it comes across here, something like that. Then I want a line going straight down from, I would say, right around this point, just going straight down. So I'm looking for that 0, something like that. Okay. And I don't know why I say okay so much, but welcome to it. Then there's a little bit of a triangle portion right there. Then I would say somewhere down here, we need a cut line kind of that would come across here. Okay, somewhere right there. And again, I'm not worried about being super clean right now. I'm kind of using this as a gauge for me for the next step. All right, it's just a technique that you can kind of do, and then you can see really are the panels, is everything lining right, is everything correct. So as an example, there's going to be another panel line that is through there. Okay, so I want to be able to just draw right through there, right in there. There's another line in there. And I'm just getting now the last ones I see. So I would say right around here, we've got like a this, and then it comes up, I'd say around here. This is what I'm saying. I think I don't have this long enough. Now that I keep looking at it a little bit more, I don't think it's long enough. And then I'm going to say, looking at this, this is why I kind of like having the physical object for myself. I can kind of look at other angles here. Say something like this. Right, the ultimate goal is seeing, did I get these proportions right? Right? Did I actually make the front of this longer? So then I'm using secondary items on here, because we're all guessing when we start making this. We're kind of making an educated guess a little bit and seeing, hey, did I get this right? So the idea here would be continue doing this process and really looking at, because I feel like I am off a little bit on this. I don't think I got it quite long enough in here. So I want to start establishing some more elements in this. Okay, so we need on the side, I've been using, for me, I'm going to switch back to this. I'm using a little bit of live boolean. So we're going to come in here. We're going to go ahead and say, let's insert a cylinder. Boom. Okay, I want that cylinder to be nice and clean, so I'm going to turn on dynamic. I'm going to just use my gizmo to continue this process. I'm going to look from the top, because I want to go here on the side of X, because I'm going to end up using mirror and weld for this for me. I don't like this, how this looks for me at all. So I'm going to turn on my poly framing. And here's something maybe is new. Again, I'm here for you guys to, if as we go, I love putting on the cape and going on tangents. So you do have questions, let me know. So let's go here. And I'm going to say geometry. And I want to get rid of all the spans in here. So obviously we could switch to something like ZModeler and hold the Alt key and click, 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 click. But the spans in here are all the same in essence. They're all getting the same flow, getting the same edge loop, right? So in edge loop, I want to just click a button to see if it will take care of this. So in here we made delete loops, and you can see it deleted all the loops with one click in between. What's up, Jorge? Okay, so what I mean by that here, we'll turn off dynamics. So, and then we'll go this way. So all of these edge loops in here, instead of me clicking on them individually, I can just hit delete loops. And it's looking at a 45-degree angle change, and it's finding all the ones that have that exact same angle between each edge, and then deleting all the ones that go through. This is something we did a long time ago, but sometimes I find it very valuable for me to do. So I wanted to make sure you guys can see that. I'm going to go ahead and let's turn on some symmetry. So I'm going to go to the top here. And I'm only doing this because I want to do some Z symmetry. I do want to use ZModeler now, so I'm going to turn on my symmetry axis. I want to also be locally looking at this because it's been moving in space, right? So I want to make sure I can tell ZBrush where do I want it to look at, right? So as I'm trying to insert an edge like this, I would want to make sure that it's saying, hey, do it along the Z axis or the X axis. Like, what axis do I want to do it on? Okay, for your symmetry lines. So you have different ones that you can do, right? So I'm going to say, let's go here. Let's put an edge there. I'm going to say, let's crease this up. And then I'm going to dynamically do this. So now we've got something like that. I'm a big component of when you're doing this, I like to put my smooth at 4 for dynamic. So I like to put that at a 4, right? And then because I creased it, this is too perfect of a cylinder. So for me, I'm a big crease. We need to make a little graphic for that. We need to make one of the graphics like that for the crease. So we need to go into crease, and then this little slider right here, crease level, I'm going to knock it down to 2 for me. So then now what it does is it softens those borders right there, that little edge where from the flat of the face across. This is something that I would say also you would really want to do and think about. This I see quite a bit is there is a process that we're all going to do, and there's stages. I kind of like see building, especially hard surface, like playing chess or like a cake. It's got layers. Right? So I would recommend thinking that way as you build things. Right? I know down the pipeline, I might use a Z-remesher. I might want to do certain things within a polygroup clicking ability that ZBrush has. So instead of this cylinder staying all one polygroup, I'm going to say, you know what would be best is if we did a new polygroup on the end caps, right? So each one of these caps now have a purple polygroup, which is just setting me up for just in cases down the road. I really want to do this a lot. This is just a personal preference of mine that I prefer to do. Just because over the years, I know I always wanting to change some things or do some things, right? There is no way to make 4 dynamic subdivision levels 4 by default. We've made it 2 on purpose. And I don't know if we would change that because there's scenarios where 4 might end up being, for example, if someone loads a model, let's say it's scan data and it's 50 million, you've got a problem now if it jumps to 4 right away, right? Or even if it's 13 million or 20 million. So we got to think of those scenarios. So, but what I would recommend doing is you could make a macro that does this for every subtool. That's what I would do. I would just create some kind of macro that it not only changes dynamic subdiv to 4, it also changes this to 2. That's how I'd go. And that's going up in here, and then you just say new macro, and then it starts to do that. Okay? So it's not that I don't know if we would ever change to 2, but that would be one reason right now that pops in my head. What is it? Visual ether. So that would be one thing I got to think about. Okay. Cool. So I would go a macro out is what I would go. And then you can assign a hotkey to that, right? And then every time you start, you hit the op key for you, right? And then you're off and running that way. Okay, so the reason why I'm doing this is, again, I'm trying to see, did I get the front of this correct? And again, my reference is a physical item that I'm looking at. So I am trying to make, there is a little detail right along here that's kind of really helped me. It also is making sure I'm aligning the cut lines for me. So I'm just trying to put this in a position for me. It needs to be a lot smaller for sure. And then I'm going to have it collide. And then we are going to turn this into a subtract and turn on our live Boolean. And so now we've got something like this happening. All right. And then I got to look at where should this start? And this should start a little bit in front of the cockpit, looking at this. This is also why I like a physical thing. I'm literally doing stuff like this, where I'm using even my finger or my pen to kind of see, okay, where does that start? Looking from the top, these lines that I already put in, I would say it sits a little bit forward from here. Okay, so this is something I might say, okay, you could even go this route, right? To really, again, because we've got freedom here. I can say right about, I want it to live right around there based upon looking at this. I'm using that. I say actually it's a little bit more forward, a little bit more in that world, right? And then now I want that to come in here, and that is supposed to be doing the paneling on the bottom here, and then we'll come out there, and now we've got this happening. Okay, and then it really tapers out and it goes pretty far. So let's do the distance first. So I'm going to say I'm going to unmask this portion. So here's something for, again, that's really important for me so you guys can visually see it. I'm doing this and then doing that. And what that's doing is giving me this, abilities to mask off certain portions like this. Obviously, I need to turn symmetry off. Okay? The mic's too far away, huh? Hold on, let me get it in closer. Let me get it in closer. All right, how's that? Is that better for the microphone? Usually it's the opposite for me. Usually pull the mic away. But is that better for you? Is that sounding better? I'll wait for that. Okay, and then, so the other thing you got to think about is a great way to adjust. Instead of just using like masking, technically, again, this is the reason why I may be playing with something low polygon, and why I wanted to get rid of all the edge loops in the middle is I can hold the Alt key, click here, and now this is in essence establishing the plane of line. All right, so this is going to be going in that direction now. So what I want to do is do this. So I can grab that blue square, and now I can really adjust the length without even using any masking at all. Is it only Varlord, or is everybody having, it's a little bit better for it? Because as far as my OBS, I'm in the yellow every time I talk. So I'm not sure. Let's see if I can do a little bit more adjustments for you. There, this is now like right there, as you can kind of see him. It's right in my face now. Yeah. Does that mean know if that's better? All right, so now this, in essence, I'm using it to say, okay, it needs to go out far enough to right around there. I'd say right around there. I can already tell you, I've kind of do not have the distance correct. And then this is kind of doing more of a tapering thing like that on the original, right? And then this, I'd probably say you can look at things like that. You can also align it like this instead, right? So I got a little bit of different alignment now happening in here. Put it more there. And then this could be, now you do this with the masking, and then now you can kind of taper it that way as well. So like, what I'm trying to get the point across is here is by having the low polygon, I kind of get a little bit more freedom to do some things here that I would want to do. So I'm going to play with this a little bit more. I'd say it's being a little bit more in that world, that realm. Looking at my reference. And again, this one's okay. It's been a long time for me. Yeah, it's for sure. Okay, so this is kind of now, I can look and say, you know what? I do not have the front of this long enough. This is a problem. So I do need to adjust it. So before I started getting in all the crazy details, I spotted something, right? And so I was using this as my spotter and going, okay, I don't have this right. This definitely needs to come out a lot further. Like the front end's more, I would say, in this realm. And then that means this, okay, needs to come. We'll turn, I have two of them now. Let's turn this one off for now. So I need a little bit more of this coming more in there, right? I just need a little bit more of a bigger front end to my X-Wing. Like that's getting a lot closer. Now, the one thing I would recommend too is using for a hard surface, you need some kind of key, right? So what I mean by that is organically, we're using a human head to understand how tall maybe the character needs to be, right? Most humans are going to be 7 3/4 heads to maybe 8 heads tall. Then we have all of our other items, like, you know, it's 3 eyes across from eye to eye with a middle eye. It's actually 5 eyes across of your whole skeleton. You can flip that and walk down the body with that. This is something Da Vinci discovered, which is, it blows my mind. Obviously, we have these things, right? Your foot is from your elbow to your wrist, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of stuff that we can use, in essence, as a caliper. You don't have that when you're doing something hard surface. You don't, right? So you got to find something, and this is where it will save you time. So my eye caught this, but it might have not caught it, and then I would have been wasting time starting to put in a lot of details. I'm trying to catch myself before I start now going down the rabbit hole of details here, because I feel like the whole main piece is off a little bit, for sure. I would even say this body is off as well, too. I need to start tweaking that, because I'd say this is not long enough either, right? So I started, these are all establishing things for me to start aligning things and make sure, do I have everything really where I'd want it to be? Okay, and go there as I start to put in all these details, as you can see in my camera. All these kind of details that are all over this. If I really want to put all those in, I need to make sure I got the right distance happening here. All right, so I'm going to say, you know what, I kind of also, I'm not going to lie, I kind of think this right in here, this portion, let's look at just this. This part in here, I think needs to be, I'm going to get rid of this for now. And let's see, am I using that? Okay, get rid of that for now. And I feel like maybe we could go, oops, a little bit also wider in certain spots as well. So again, mirror and welding is going to come in handy here for us, right? So obviously in the modified topology, I can mirror and weld across the X. Then I get beauty. I'm getting that because dynamic is on, right? Your local symmetry is on. So that makes a very big difference. Right now, I got left and right side. So this is the kind of stuff I start thinking about. But I would say it feels to me that it needs to be a little bit wider up here. So I'm going to switch to a mask. I'm going to turn on my symmetry again and then kind of mask that. And let's look at it in this sense. Low polygon. And I'd say we'll mask that one. And we'll inverse that. And just a touch. Not something too major. I want that just to be a little bit more wide. Okay, something more in that realm. And then so when I turn everything on, just want a little bit more width in there. Okay, that's working for me now. All right, that looks good. That looks good. Feel like I need to check this. I'll check this out too. But before I do start doing stuff like that, another reason why I'm doing this. Okay, here's a technique that I like to use for this. Okay, so now looking at this, this is way off, right? So this needs to be probably more in this realm in there. Okay, so this, I don't like what's happening here. So because the masking, and then I'm extruding by holding the control key, and then I can extrude. So I'm holding control and clicking on the arrow. That allows me to extrude. Because part of it is masked, so that's an extrusion that ZBrush is going to do. Oh, we've got it. Don't you worry. We haven't gotten rid of Lisa. She's still here. She's still here. I got to make a new tangent one, though. I don't have a tangent one. I have that old one. I got to make a new one. It's just a little echo chamber. Okay. Hold on. Let me check and see. Maybe it's got... Hold on. Enable down mix. Okay. Let me turn off enable down mixing and see if that improves some stuff. Okay, we'll see if that helps. All right, so in this case, because I know what I'm dealing with, I'm going to use the gizmo. Okay, I'm going to turn off symmetry. We're going to center this. I'll align this so it's nice and straight. And it would be better to use the deformer. This would be something because then I can look at these points and then just pull on this. And you see, it's not creating the problem for me. And so now I would say, okay, I need there. I want that aligned with the front of there. So now, again, I'm using that alt so I can start doing things like that. So now I have this piece. That is much better. This is getting a lot closer to where I want. So now if I go back to that paintbrush again, right now I'll turn off Sculptris Pro. I can now kind of even redo these lines, but more importantly, I can also erase. So you see I got black right now with Alt key. Without the Alt key, I can kind of erase and redo that portion of that, right? So again, I wanted this to be kind of having a nice little detail there. So now I want to use black, right? So now I want to draw with black. So I want this ability again. I'm going to turn on that symmetry and say, okay, it needs to go straight again here. And again, for me, I don't need it perfect. And I'm going to show you the technique that I kind of like to do with this, and this is why I'm doing it. So I'm using kind of a referencing here for this. Let me turn this bad boy back on because it's an important element to me. So it comes up into here. I would say right about here. I need a nice line through there. Okay, well that's good. Then let's see, it has a line that's following through there. Okay, and I would say it actually does a little bit more of, just a slight more of an angle, like through there. And then I would say I'm going to now do another one to there, and then across. And again, I don't have Sculptris Pro on, so if you have Sculptris Pro on, you can see how much cleaner. And if you go with the smaller draw size, you're going to get even more clean of a stroke. So this is why I would use Sculptris Pro on a technique like this. All right. So the goal here is I took the original. I still have the original. That is low, 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 low topology. And for one more, let's you say low one more time for giggles. Okay. So this is going to be my main one. That hey, when I do see spot something or I want to make some big changes, and now I'm kind of using this one to try and create some secondary things to kind of make sure I do have my proportions. Finding that key. And for me, one of the big things is for sizing key, looking at is the cockpit. Right? So if I'm lucky if this is the physical one, I would do a measurement and see how many of the cockpits actually fit on the X-Wing, right? The whole body. So for me, I have the cockpit that we can use, right? So just like kind of that we do already, I could use this as a way to say, okay, I need one there, and then one there, right? And then one here, and then say, okay, let's make another one here, right? So this is what I mean by a key. The cockpit's now my key. This is fitting about 5. Now I go to this, and I see, should it be 5? It's really 4.5. I would say 4.5 for me. Is it really 4.5? This is the kind of stuff I got to start finding for hard surface. So these are the things I'm talking about right now. I've got a started piece. Now I'm kind of going through and doing a double check on the body and on everything else, right? So realistically, doing all these details on the wing, I should have waited to do. But now that I started doing them, I notice that there's some things off that I don't quite like, and I want to adjust that and change that, okay? So this is what I'm doing. I'm doing those secondary things. In this case, I would now measure, and this would help me establish how off I am making the front what it is, and then the back what it is, especially before I start, if you look at my camera, getting in all those details behind R2-D2. Right? I got to make sure I can get all those details, so I got to make sure that the length of that body is correct, i.e. this length is correct. And I think I probably need just a little bit more. And it's not something huge, but I want to be able to spot this. Okay, so this is part of my workflow. So what I'm doing is making a copy that can help me kind of just quickly look at this really rudimentarily, really fast. So again, I can take a look at this, and if I found even an aerial view of this, I can apply it as paint and see, right? So if we go, here's just another way to think about this. I'm using black and white lines right now, but let's say I go, here, let me get into the internet. Yeah. Let's say, let's look, X-Wing top view Luke. We're going to even, because I'm doing Luke Skywalker's. One. So, okay. Here we go. Let's get an image. Let's see if we can get one. We need directly above. Here we go. Let's see what we got there. Okay, this isn't bad. That's someone's face. I'm looking, see. if I have one. This is where the book comes in, right? This is where I would pull out the book, take an image, and probably bring that in to use. So let me see. I got a good one of the Lego one, which would be pretty fun to build. Every time I see that Lego one, I'm like, what am I doing? I'm building one that I can just 3D print for myself. Oh, here we go. What's this one? Ah, here we go. Let's see if we can get this image in. I'm just trying to get to the image. Okay, I'm just going to do... Oh, give me a second. I'm trying to get an image here. Okay. Now back into here. I'm going to go back into... Hold on, let me get my chat back out front. All right, Ian. Have a good flight, man. Be safe. So texture, I'm going to import my image that I wanted. So let's say desktop. Here's a screen grab. Here we go. Okay. Then I'm going to say, let's take this image and put it in Spotlight. Okay, so this is just something that we can do now, right? So I'm going to rotate it this direction. I'm going to play with the opacity a little bit of the whole image. I kind of just want to see a little bit of it. And I'm going to start lining this up, right? And you can see how far off am I with everything in the sense of this image. So this is important, is the image that you're using is important. So I can see, here, let me up it. Here's R2, or the R units, R2D2, right? So now this is going to be my pivot. So what I can do is say, let's move that to there. And now anywhere within inside of here, just move this. I'm going to put it over my temporary R2 and see how far off I am here, right? And then if I scale this up, I'm scaling it up based upon that R2. So this is my pivot point. So you can see I was off in the distance, right? This is now looking a lot closer. I wouldn't marry myself to this image perfectly, but it's a great thing to kind of just get a little gauge. Okay, now, the reason why I might also do this and why you guys might want to use an image, right? So here's a good reason why you might want to do that. And by the way, you can snap this to the center of the model. So you can see that's mesh center, world center, mesh center. And then you can slide it along there. So if you start to move a little bit and then hold the shift key, it stays along the alignment here. So I can line that image up like that. Okay. And then, so this is like editing mode. This is where I can edit my image and do other things with it. So you can see I could probably get away with, we should tweak this a little bit more. Looks like the cockpit is pretty good. I think my cockpit might be a little too big. And mine might be, obviously mine's wider than the image. But what I really care about is this portion right in here. This part right in through here. Right? So this is my edit mode where I'm tapping Z. Then I'm going to come in here and say, let's make a spotlight radius. Say, that's good enough. And now when I hit Z, I'm no longer seeing the image. The image, however, is still there. Like, we still have that image. So as I move this around, you can see the image here. Okay? And what I want to do is kind of just paint the image right on the model. So obviously, I want to go with a lot bigger brush size. And I don't need Sculptris Pro for this. I'm more just seeing, did I get this right? And now Shift Z turns it off. And now I can take a look at this and see, you know what? I'm actually on point. I thought it wasn't big enough, but it's big enough. All right. And now what does all this technique, why do I care about something like this and doing things like this? Here's another thing that's just going to help me out. When I got to go now create all the green bullets in here through this, and obviously if you had a better image and a cleaner image, this would be even easier. I now know exact placement of exact sizing of all the greeble that's happening in here. I'm not making any more real big guesses. And, I'm using physical one that I can look at really what is that and what's in the makeup of this and kind of make the pieces. But I don't know really how big do I need it to be, how small do I need some of these pieces to be. So this is going to give me that advantage. The other thing it gives me is everything that's happening on the X-Wing and the panels. It's kind of like it's scribe lines in essence. It's just some nice lines. So now this part, as we were talking, opens up some things for me as well. So let's go back to here because one thing I did forget to do was we need a little bit of a triangle in here. And let's turn on Sculptures Pro. So it's just cleaner. And then there. Okay. So what this can do for you all now is something that I found very valuable and useful for me. Right? And so we're going to solo this out. We're going to turn on Polyframe. Okay. I'm going to make this all one polygroup. Nothing else. And I'm actually going to hide the lines. So the only thing I do see is polygrouping. Nothing else. I don't want to see the topology, right, in essence. Okay? So, why I do this is, and this is kind of how I did, just to give you an understanding, this is how I did the wing. What I'm doing, what I'm about to show you is how I did some of the wing parts, like these parts for the wing. Like, so if we turn everything on, and we turn our color back to this, right? So you see like this. See this paneling right here? That I am, this right here. I'll make a bigger cursor. All this. This is the technique I used to do this. Like I've already got the proportions that I want and the things where I want. So let's go back now and say, okay, well, what exactly did I do? I did now, and I'm going to turn this into solo so we can focus on this portion. Turn the floor grid off so we can just take a look at what I'm doing. Mirror and welding is going to be important to me, right? So I want to have an understanding of my mirror and weld, right? So this is something I'm going to use a lot if I want to use a mirror and weld through here, okay? So I would want that mirror and weld. And then I say, okay, all I care about are now these black lines that I drew. So I'm going to come up here, holding on my control and shift. I'm going to do slice curve in there. And then now I'm going to say, okay, well, there needs to be this ends, I'd say inside the cockpit. So there's a polygroup. Now, understanding this, I'm going to come straight across and I can just say, okay, that line needs to live there, right? I want it to live right through there. That's where I want it to live. Okay, so I'm just following the paint job. So I'm making sure I'm covering over the entire purple. I'm going to say, well, right there. Now I have that. This is where now our mirror and weld, right? We want to take a look at what direction do we want to go by, right? So this is obviously, I now know I want to be drawing actually on this side. So when I mirror and weld, I get the other side there. Okay, so now I've got this piece. Here, we'll make it a different color. And now I say, okay, there needs to be a nice cut line through there. There needs to be a nice cut line there. And now we're looking at saying, okay, I need something through here. So I'm going to make that, right? And then I'm going to make this. Let's go all the way down to here. Then I'm going to start in the green, okay? And I come across like this. And then I'm just going to go this direction to give me that. Again, I'm mirror and welding it over, okay? Because really, I want that as an important element. And then that, and then that as an important element for me, okay? This is what I'm looking for to have. Now, one thing I might do to kind of just keep looking at this is now really get a little bit of gauge of this is turn off the poly paint and start seeing the panels for what I'm making, okay? So we can turn our poly paint back on. We need something up here, all right? So again, I can't, with this brush, make this shape like this, but I can do other things that could be useful for me. But I'm just going to say, again, continuing with this brush, I'm just going to go across and make sure I'm crossing over the purples, right? So I'm making this piece here. And then now I can say, okay, I need it here, there, and then now let's go across where, again, we want to be on this side of our symmetry. And then now, again, I'm going to mirror and weld that over. through here. Okay, and then now I want to make sure this purple and this orange-ish are the same polygroup. Something like that. And that's what I'm establishing. And in fact, we want this one and this one to be the same polygroup. We want that. Because this is just some kind of right now little accenting piece. And then now this is when I take a look at this and go, okay, this comes like this, right? And then it comes across, right? Kind of a thing like that. And then I can mirror and weld that. And now I have that piece. Okay, so it's about creating these kind of structural elements. I would say this one now goes from the blue out this way. Okay, we'll mirror and weld that. And then now this one would go out, right, across again. So if I redrew this one, we're doing this. And then I'm going to go straight across. And then I'm going to mirror and weld. Okay, and then now these are in essence panel lines and cut lines through here. Okay, that we have going on. And what this opens up for me, because of the density of the mesh, and now that I just took that poly paint and I kind of just figure things out for me, where I want them to go, okay? Tell me how to move the noisemaker window inside the ZBrush program. You can't. If you're asking when you launch noisemaker, you want to move the window around, you can't do it. We don't allow it. It's stationary. We don't allow it to move around right now. It's a good thought. It's something I can definitely look into and seeing about us adding. Obviously, the iPad version, it completely takes over the iPad itself. So there is thoughts of the way we're going to continue working and developing for the desktop side, for sure. All right, so now I'm a big fan of these extruder profile brushes, which they are very handy. Okay, they're allowing me to just kind of create like a pattern, right? And there's some that are just pretty simple, like this one's a little bit more simple. But you'll notice when you're drawing on a surface, half of it's sitting inside the surface and half of it's sitting outside the surface. This is on purpose. Okay, especially so you can start doing things like this, or I can even go smaller, right? Things like that. So the reason why I'm doing all of this is now I'm going to say, let's take this, and now that we made these cuts where we want the cuts, all right, and I would probably say, if I want to, let's just for the sake of argument, let's take this down here, okay, and then take these. Let's make a separation through here. We'll make that be one poly group, okay, and then now I would say, let's hide these, Control W, and then there, okay, and so now I take this, I've got a brush, okay, that allows you to draw out something. So now I can say, instead of me drawing it out, I'm going to go my curve functions in the stroke, and I'm going to say, don't look at the border and don't look at crease edges. The only thing I really want you to look at is polygrouping. So obviously when you do this, we frame it, right? So everywhere where there is a polygroup, we get a framed mesh. So now turn off symmetry, and now just tap on any of the curves, and what do we get? We get all these pieces of geometry that now I'm going to use for my benefit. Yeah, visual effort, this is kind of what, obviously the thought process with the iPad, you don't have a lot of screen space, so we took over the entire iPad. This is something we're thinking about looking at, well, maybe we do similar thing like you're saying. For the desktop, do we take over the whole screen? There's a lot of things we can do, right? I would say if you look at the iPad and things that we're experimenting with on the iPad, is something that's stuff that we're also setting up for us to think about desktop continually as well. Okay, so this automatically is going to mask off the thing that I've been painting on and getting some things on. So now I'm just going to split this to my benefit. Doesn't matter which one. Here, I'll move this up, make sure you guys can see that. So I'm going to click on one of them, split mask points or on mask points. It really does not matter. And then what that's doing is the lines that I just made are now here. Okay, they're their own subtool. So if we turn this, the nice clean one back on, all right, and we turn this on, we're having some scribe lines in places where we want them, okay? and where we want things to have going on and happening here. And so if I turn on subtract, we can start subtracting into the surface. And I have some alignment things that I need to fix. But in essence, this is the workflow that I would start to use for me, looking at what I can do here, right? And so we'll go to this one, right? So this is a quick way for me to just make some very quick scribe lines, but it's also helping me making sure my proportions are right. Everything is good to go, right? So this is then your whole thought process and movement through here. So I shouldn't have to adjust this. So I'm messing with the other one, unfortunately. Okay, but you can see I've got these lines. And then the nice thing about this is that it is non-destructive, right? So if I at any point want to get rid of this, I just turn that on, and then there you go, right? If you remember, I adjusted the width. That's why it's off, right? So this one doesn't have the same. This one doesn't have the same width that this one does, right? So I adjusted these. If you remember, I kind of went later, so that's why we've got a little bit of a difference happening there, right? So this is kind of the process. So this is all right. Now I think I've got the length that I want. I got, well, that looks good. We did the painting part on this. That looks good. I kind of like it with a little bit more width in it. That looks good. The only thing that's bothering me that I want to double check before I start now diving more and more into the details. And again, what I just showed you is how I did all these little panels. So these panels right here, that's all I did. I took the original cylinder one, divided it up to the point, deleted the subdivision, and then just use slicing to make things happen. Or in this case, I could even just use ZModeler to do the same kind of element, right? So thinking about that in the context, looking at these, okay, again, if you're looking at just this, and now I'm trying to make panels here, right? So if we turn our line back on, this is what I have. So this is where, like, okay, I want to make some panels. This is where I probably would turn on line, do some ZModeler, and then say, okay, I need panels to insert. I want one there. It's going to be that wide. Then I need another edge loop here, because what I would like to do is go from here, right? And I'm going to say, let's bridge that 2 points. And I want to go from there to there. Okay? And then I want to go from there to there. And what's important for me for the panel is this portion. This is the panel that I'm concerned about, that I want. And so I'm using this topology to give me this. And right now, as you guys can see, the other thing that I am taking advantage of is array mesh. This is why I love this. This is why I've become a big component of it, because I technically have multiple symmetries here, right? I've got my X symmetry in here for this piece, but then I've got symmetry this way across, and then I got symmetry also top to bottom, if you will. And it's only because I'm using a array mesh. And this becomes important for me is because I can kind of design this, play with this, and then I still have all my symmetry. And at any time, obviously, I can turn this off, do other actions, that things that maybe I don't want with stuff on. It just creates a little bit different workflow. Again, non-destructive workflow. And then the reason why I'm doing this is if we duplicate this, we're duplicating everything. So I'm actually duplicating the array mesh. So this is why before I did this, right there, but now this is my panel. And I say, okay, this part is what I care about here. I kind of want to make this a separate panel. Brush ZModeler. I'm going to go Q meshing it. I'm going to say polygroup all on this. And then I'm going to say, let's just say, okay, now polygroup all. Yep. I want this to start looking at the polygroup of the brown part, right? That's all I care about. And let's do this. Let's get rid of, we've got interior portion as well, because I had a thickness in there. So we need to fix that for sure. So I'm going to do easier just to do a polygrouping. Auto group it. There, it's fixed. I really only care about this part anymore. So I'm going to say geometry, delete hidden. And now again, this is the panel that I'm caring about. Like that. Okay. And then now when you're doing this, I can, in essence, rip it off. And now all I do care about is this. Delete hidden. Let's go through some dynamic on this if we wish. Okay. And now you can either make it have thickness like this, right? Do thickness like that. So you're physically adding the thickness here. Then you can take a look. And now this is where, again, I'm going to go into my creasing. I'm going to crease that, crease those. And then in here, maybe I also want this creased. Right? And then the thing here is this panel is hugging perfectly under that underlining cylinder. This is the point. Okay? So I'm using what I've built kind of to build the other parts. So that's what I did to do these pieces in here. Like, see that panel right in there? This one right here? That panel and those panels. It's just taking advantage of the cylinder. Blood Rapture. I like that name. That's a good one. Rodolfo, what's up? Let's see what time is it there right now. It's 9 p.m. All right. Okay. Speaking of symmetry, is there a way to store a pivot point on an object that can't be lost or moved? I tried the stager, but it gets offset and broken sometimes for me. As far as pivot points, if you're referring to like the gizmo, no, there is no stored position that can be well, there's a stored position, but there's no I want to set a pivot point here and go back to it. But what you might be wanting, I don't know if you're aware of it. I guess now this is a new question for me. Blood Rapture, what version of ZBrush are you using? That would be my first question, is what version are you using? That's what I would want to know. Real quick. Because maybe there is something here. Oh, you're cooking some risotto. All right. So maybe there is something you aren't aware of, or why you're running into, or why you're wanting this from the stager. This is like a multiple question for me, is what version you want. And number two, I'm thinking it's because you want symmetry. Is that what I'm assuming? You want to be able to recall the pivot point for a symmetry purpose, or is there any other purpose for that? Because the one thing that I am highlighting is one thing that we use stager for, okay, is I wanted the ability, let's close these, is to say, okay, I want this to be the home state, right? And then we could do things like this, and then rotate it, change its size, and we'll turn symmetry off, change its size, and things like this, and that's our target, right? So what we can do is if I turn symmetry back on, we can switch, and then of course whatever I'm doing here, right, I'm in the actual perfect symmetrical world of ZBrush in essence, or the world itself. And then when I go and switch back, all that sculpt is still there and still transferred. Right? Okay? So is this one of the main reasons why you were thinking about stager? Because if so, obviously now what is possible, if we, let's recenter this, let's do this. You can now, even if you do this, you no longer need this. You don't need a stager. So if I turn symmetry on, you can see it's not symmetrical. If I now turn on local symmetry, we are symmetrical. So in the newest versions of ZBrush, we have added the ability, and this has been was a feature request in all honesty from you guys as users. Hey, I'm moving my model around. I still want to have symmetry. So this is now, there is the new mode of local symmetry. So there's two modes of local symmetry now. There's a dynamic and there's a non-dynamic. So the dynamic mode is looking at something to give us this symmetry. So this is also going to lead into your pivot. Okay, I lose a pivot and then it becomes a pain to work the symmetrical object like swords hanging on a belt. Okay, so here's some stuff that you could try doing. All right. So the pivot point number 1 can be recentered to the mesh at any time. That's what this recentering is. So this is symmetrically recentering. If I turn symmetry off, now it's sitting at the center of the model. Like it is sitting center at the face, right? Right. So that's what this is doing. That's one thing. But the one thing you got to understand is this is also based upon visibility. So I can actually do symmetry, or symmetry, setting this pivot to that. It also can work with if you did like a mask. Okay, so if I did an inversing of mask of this, it'll look at this as well. So with this in thought process and things, we wanted to continue using this idea. So this local dynamic symmetry is what it's using is the gizmo. So the gizmo, think about it as each one of these arrows. Think about if there was a plane and it's infinitely forever in every direction along this. So what I mean is think of the gizmo as we now have ability that it is, okay, so this is say my X, all right, and then let's duplicate 2 more, and then let's say this is going to be, let's make this one this way, okay, and then now we need one this way. Oops. Right, so you got to think about it. If these extended forever, this X is in essence, this is now the plane of that arrow. This plane is the blue arrow, and then this plane, right, is the green. Okay, so what we've done is going back to this guy, is when we are sculpting dynamically, okay, when we turn this on and then turn on our clay buildup brush, and then we want to sculpt symmetrically in here and start doing this, what becomes important is that. Okay, so the gizmo's way off. And so that gizmo center is all about where that now dynamic local is looking at. So this is where also blood rapture could come in handy for you. So you can see right now it's a problem. So there's multiple ways we can set this. The first one's the easiest. The first one is if we look at the geometry of this demo head, the left side and the right side of the geometry are identical. What I mean by that is the edge loops, the size of each polygon, they're identical. So like this polygon here is the exact same one on the other side, size-wise, and location-wise, and everything. So I can, because of this, I can go to transform, and then I can say use posable symmetry, and then you can see the gizmo actually snaps back, and it's sitting, if you see, it's sitting dead center of him. And not only that, it's sitting at this dead center symmetry edge loop going through the center of his face. Because ZBrush knows, hey, this and this, they're identical geometry-wise, topology-wise. So the center's right here. So I'll move the gizmo there. Does that make sense? Hopefully, you're following along what I'm throwing at you right now. This is one of those Lisa needs braces, or even look up here, look up here, look up here, look at me, look at me, look at me. Right? God, I missed it. Right? Oh, Comics Legend. It's been a while. Thanks for the welcoming back. I am going to get back to streaming on a regular basis. So, and happy Valentine's Day to you as well. Okay, so what we've also done, besides just that, because you're not always going to have topology that is perfectly identical on the left and right side in this case. So if we look at this, in this case, we're lucking out that the topology is the same. We can also use ZModeler. So what we've done here is we've done something called set symmetry. And this option, set symmetry, is available in polygon, edge, and vertex. So if I hover over an edge, same thing, right? I can have a set symmetry, vertex point, and set symmetry. So what I can do is I can say, okay, I'm going to turn symmetry off. And you can see ZModeler saying, okay, click the first point of interest of symmetry, which I'm going to make actually this edge. And now it's saying click the second one, and I'm going to go over the one that's on the other side that is sitting in the same location, click it, and then the gizmo automatically gets put in between those. That's what this is doing. So if I did, say, click here and then click there, you see the gizmo is being put in between. If I did a face one, where I go, okay, let me go, well, I want to know between this face and this face for some reason, there, it's moving to the center of that. Okay, so maybe this can help you with some of the stuff that you're trying to do with having your pivot point where you want it, and then maybe having things for symmetry as options for that, because now you can set this. And again, your gizmo is looking at that symmetry also for sculpting. So when I do this, okay, when I click here and then click here, right, that has now been moved. So when I go to sculpt with symmetry on, right, I'm trying to get this to be in the same symmetry access points. That's kind of the point of that, is trying to realign my symmetry here, okay, and making sure I have this. For this case, you could even just click on a point and draw it along there, right? I'm at the center, and it's aligned in here. And so now, right, you could go this approach as well. So now I am working in symmetry again, because I'm moving my gizmo around. Move my gizmo around to where I want to go. Does this make sense, Blood Rapture? Is this helpful for you, what you're trying to do? Since you can't store your pivot, but there is something else you could do if we wanted to. Something else you technically probably could do is, like, this is not something, this is just thinking, this is me just thinking outside the box a little bit in here, right? So if I have this, okay, and let's center this, so it's sitting at the center of this guy, and let's say even, all right, I'm going to even restart it just so it's very different. We could, like, if you think about this, you could duplicate this and then say, okay, I have this as another mesh. So I'm going to say, let's take this idea instead. Let's take this and say, what if we were to, once again, let's align this to where I want this to go. So clicking through here, I've got that aligned, all right? And then dragging out this, okay? So I could say, I'm going to delete the subdivision levels for now. All right, we're going to delete these, and then now drag this out, and now I can replace it with a plane. Okay, so this plane, and I would say I want point there and something there. And now this plane, in essence, can be used to kind of adjust so I can put this inside if I want, the head, and then I can use this plane at any time. It's like if I'm doing this, and now I kind of want to realign to the original, I could click it like that, and use this plane as kind of what we're doing with the gizmo in essence. I'm just taking that idea and saying, well, what if I actually did put a physical plane in the world that's moving with this head, that it's always going to be there. And I can use that plane to reestablish even easier symmetry if I wanted to. Okay, it's just an idea of me just thinking, what if we tried this? This is something where I'm trying to experiment and do things like that. Okay, does that make sense for you? Does that work for you? Hopefully, it's just a thought, just an idea, things to think about. Okay. All right, let's go back into this, Mr. X-Wing here. Let's start now. I like where I'm at. My proportions, I'm feeling good about them. I think they all look good, except the only one that I want to double check is this guy right here. Feel like it needs to be, you know, a little bit longer, I would say. I don't know if it's sticking out far enough. This is where I want to double check some things. Okay, so I'm going to be really dirty with this. Again, looking at this, I'm going to duplicate this. And then this, I'm going to turn off the original. I'm going to go into geometry, dynamic, let's apply it. Okay, and now we have this. I'm going to divide some more, and even one more. Again, this is also another beauty of array mesh. I only have one. Okay, so the other 4 are being generated by ZBrush. Then I'm going to switch to the chisel. Then I'm going to do this one, and then instead of that, and I want to go a little bit smaller. Yeah, I'd say more in that world. I'm going to switch this to Z-add. So now I'm adding to that, like that. And I'm going to knock down the intensity. So it's just, yes, that's a lot better for me. All right, so this has what I'm looking at. Let's see if, in my camera. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see it very well. Okay, that. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to look at this really quick as the world of seeing what steps I need to be. Number 1, this is supposed to have a little ridge right here. So let me put that as an establishing point. Then I say it goes from there, right from there, all the way to there. Okay, and then I'd say it does that again from there, but not as long, right around in there. Okay, so I'm going to start doing this. Now here's the thing. I am drawing on top of this. So what I mean by that is as I draw here, right, it starts bumping it out. Okay, and you can see it's drawing on top of it. And in fact, you know, it would be worth doing for this, you know, if you want the real good quality, what it would have been smarter of me would have been taking ZModeler and adding a lot more edge loops in here so that when I divided, there's much more consistency in this. So when I divide this up and start getting into that, they're 2.4 million. When I go back to the chisel, right, I can see a nice stroke even if I'm going on angles. Because that's in essence what's here. So now really, I do have something here going. So I would say, yeah, I would say it's pretty right before this. I would say it's right before that. It comes across like that. Then again, I have something from here to here, and then here to here, but not as long. And then now this is where you're going to see my problem the most, is this. When I go over top, you're getting that. Okay, so what I'm going to do, before I even do that stroke, I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to store a morph target. And then now what that allows me is if I do this, and then I do that, see, I actually get the same look. That's what I'm looking for. Right, so it doesn't build upon what's there. I would say for this brush right now, for what I'm trying to do with it, I would turn off one other thing here. And it's this, what I'm doing right now. Changing the size of this and the repeatingness of this by my pressure. So right now, I don't want any pen pressure being used or established at all in this. So in the brush palette, I'm going to say, let's look at the tablet pressure. And you can see right here, the size has got an angle on it. So I'm going to, in essence, turn it off by making it just be right across. And then now I can say, let's go from here to here. And now when I go here to there, I want to go all the way to there. Then I want this one to stop right there. And now if I come from here to here, like it's right. Okay. This is what I'm trying. This is what I want. I want that look. That's the look I'm going for. Okay. And so what's giving me that ability is having a morph target. That's what's giving me this ability. Okay. And then I can start just really briefly putting more stuff in this. Go with even a smaller one. Okay. And then looking at this pattern that's here is really, I'm never really taking a close look. It's interesting. It's an interesting pattern. I'm going to say I want to go to there. Okay. And then now we've got some repeating stuff. So it comes like, okay, so it comes up to here. And I would say we go right around into here. Turn the corner. Well, there probably could be a little bit better in there. Something like that. Okay. And then now I need 4 repeating. So it looks like I am raw. Looks like we are good to go. Now that I've established these, kind of really seeing, we are good to go. Oops. Right, so it looks like I do have this. Looks like we're good. Right, but this is what I'm saying. Like, I'm double checking something really quick before I dive into trying to put these details on, which this would be a way I would put this pattern, using this brush and having it kind of raise the surface, not cut in like that. So I'm flipping it, right? And then now with the morph target, I can go over top any of the strokes. Okay? And then I'm good to go. Right? It's not going to create some kind of lumpy jumpiness to it. That's a great question from Comics Legend. Doing this on a layer, since it's sculptural, yeah, I would probably do this on the layer. Okay, but you also got to think here, is you kind of are on a layer. By storing the morph target to get the advantage of this, right, this ability for us to do this, the morph target, in a little bit of a way, is the layer. Okay? So, what I mean by that is there is a stored morph target. So if I just switch to the morph target brush, this is in essence now an eraser, right? So I can start erasing things out. So I can say, let's go really intense. Let's have a harsh focal shift, right? And I can start doing stuff like literally, I can get rid of all of this if I want to. Right? Nothing's stopping me from doing that. You throw something like an alpha on this too. Now I'm using an alpha, right? So I can do cutting into things like that, right? And then I can say, do it again kind of a thing. Right? And then see, look, I just cut it up. Hey, Chris Wolf, good to see you back. Good to see you guys all rejoin me. Like, we just kind of announced this, that myself, Ian, Daisuke, and Rodolfo are going to get back into streaming with you all. This is part of the fun part for me for over the... Guys, it's been 18 years working on ZBrush. 18 years that I've been working on ZBrush. It's crazy. So I'm excited to get back. Excuse me, I'm getting warm. I'm going to take off my hoodie. Which is great for me. So this has always been a really fun part of what I've been able to do with you all over these years. So I'm excited to get back, and we're definitely going to continue this. All right, so what I do want to highlight about this, why I think the morph target is also such a crucial thing to comics legend, yeah, if you made a layer, then yeah, you can turn stuff on and off really easy with a click of the button. You can turn it to a negative, turn it to a positive. This is the benefit of a layer. But what I want you guys also to think about in here is if we didn't have a morph target, right? So let's go back to here. Yeah, there. And let's delete the morph target, right? So let's say, oh, you know what, that workflow we were talking about in the stream, I kind of want to use that, but I started doing all this and I forgot to store a morph target to do maybe the erasing, or maybe I lost the morph target along the way. What we can do and what we can take advantage of is our undo history. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this number right here, okay, which is 2.4 million. Okay, and what I want is I'm going to go backwards now in time, boom, 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 and then I'm going to hold control, make a marker. I'm going to double check that I have the same polygon count. For this thing, the poly count must be identical, right? So I've got the same polygon count. I come all the way back to here, and then now the morph brush will still work. Even though there's no morph target over here stored, the stored morph target is in the undo history, is where it is. I love that that's pointing for us, the little hand, right? So this is, you'd actually now in ZBrush, and you would have to have one of the newer versions of ZBrush to have this. So we put this in, I want to say 2024 is when we put this in. So you need to at least have that version to have this, what I'm doing right now. Right? So even with that said, if I don't want to even think about polygon count, or let's say this mesh was a Dynamesh at some point, or a Sculptris Pro at some point, or anything like that, we could go all the way back and go even to here. We'll go to here where it's even faceted. I'm going to store this now. So what we have is 2.4 million, but I've stored a point over here that's only 37,000. So when I click, ZBrush is going to say, hey, Lisa needs braces moment. That's not going to work. The topology is different. So I'm going to say skip the note, and I'm going to switch to the history recall, and I can do the same thing. And you can see, look, I did this on purpose. You can see the faceting of the other one. So I'm going to crank the intensity so we can just be a lot stronger. And look, I am now taking the information that's stored in that other stored you undo state and getting this back. But that state was also faceted. So I'm even getting the faceting back. Right? So in essence here, what you guys got to start looking at is your undo history is starting to become an unlimited sculpting technique mode. And we are using our undo history in a lot of places now and do a lot of things. Like what I'm doing right now, I'm using that stored point to kind of erase and get back to the original cylinder, in essence, is what I'm doing, right? And if I really said, you know what, to your point of the layer, okay, obviously I can make this a layer. There's easy ways to make this a layer. But what you also could do is, oh man, I want to get back to the beginning, right? So this stored point, I can actually come into the subtool menu. I can come down to project, and I can hit this project history. And what it's doing is, this is where it's sitting, but it's actually seeing this, and it's giving me back the clean cylinder again with nothing on it. Because that projecting history is like the project all, but in this case, it doesn't need subtools. It just needs itself. And that's it in this scenario. You can also use that. So for me, guys, when I'm doing a sculpt, then I ZRemesh, then I need to project everything back in, I no longer do a second subtool. I now only do one subtool. And I just do everything in that one subtool now. Which I can show you guys what I mean if it's not grasping what I'm saying right now. So there's a question I see coming through. One more question. Is it possible to do it in ZBrush so that the vertex points are visible like in Maya or Blender so that they are visible? No. No, we don't allow the rendering of all the vertex points like you would in another 3D application because our main item, our main thing is sculpting. Whereas the other ones you brought up, Maya and Blender, their main base is not sculpting. Their main base is box modeled lower polygons and then building upon that in a way, right? So they obviously need to make sure you can select the components, edges and faces and vertex points. Then they got to make sure they can render those so you can visually see them better. Our base, in essence, the structure where ZBrush started was sculpting. So we weren't trying to render out everything because you're sculpting. You just want to see a ball of clay and start forming it. Now, is this something that maybe we add down the road, especially when we're looking at ZModeler? Because ZModeler does have that ability of showing you your vertex points. Okay, that is possible. And to the point where I mean, like, when you're doing this, those orange dots, these orange dots are your vertex points. And then that's showing you where is that vertex point in real space, but when it's being divided, that's where it's going to go, and that's where it is. And dynamically, that's what we're showing you. We're showing you the dynamic subdivision, and then that's really where that point's going to end up when you go to divide. And in my case, I'm dividing by 4 times. So this is the only time that in ZBrush you really can have a render of where your vertex point is. It's when you have dynamic subdivisions turned on, and then now it's showing you that vertex point. I'm going to grasp ZBrush's project primitive. Yeah, but it is super useful. For sure. Make it happen with Jay, man. It's been a while. Okay, one more question. Okay, so hopefully, Vitali, that helps answer your question. So, yes, Cosmic's Legend is making a good point. If you guys want your undo history and you always want it, then you're going to want to save a project. Tools do not save undo history. Projects do. Because that's also the benefit is you can always load a subtool months from now. Like this, I haven't picked this thing up in months, right? But I still have undo history if I was saving a project. I would have all that. Yeah, I can show you project primitive. Sure, of course. I love some tangents. But let's see. I'm debating if I want to show it. Just stick with this or make something. Let's have a little fun. Let's make something here. Okay. Let's go to a cylinder. Let's kind of play with this cylinder a bit. Let's go to initialize. I want to get rid of these middle points of interest. I'm going to make it be here. Okay, that's good for me. We'll make that a poly mesh. So let's do something like that. Let's go even maybe a little bit smaller. Yeah, like that. And let's switch to some ZModeler. Let's go ahead and do a Q mesh by polyloop. Alright, let's do something like that. Let's go ahead and, you know what, let's also size this down. This direction. Okay, so maybe not that much. Let's go there. Then let's take that. Let's do multiple. Let's make a different poly group in there. Let's make sure it is very different, not like anything else. And let's take Q mesh. And this time let's do a poly group all. Alright, let's smooth it. Let's see what we've got here. I'm going to now say let's smooth it by 4. Let's crease by the old PG'er. Alright, and let's drop that crease level down. Something around in that world. Okay. And let's say I want to play with this a little bit more. So I'm going to use my extender instead and just make a point in there. Yeah, something maybe a little bit more like that. And let's do something like that. Yep. Let's do Q mesh. Let's do something here on the top. Let's get a little different. Let's go ahead and do a major bevel. Then we'll crease by PG again. So I got something like that on the top. Just making up stuff as we go here. Just making up some stuff. Okay. Then let's go ahead and insert single edge loop. Let's do something like that. Do something close. I'm going to crease those. All right. Let's look at symmetry. So maybe, yeah, something like that. I'm going to go with. In fact, let's have just a little bit more fun with this. There. Okay, and then let's go bridging. Let's go bridging! Let's bridge to there. No, let's go the other way. From there to there. Let's do that. And there to there. And now this. Okay, we got. And then now, let's Q mesh polygon ball. Do something like this. Okay, let's crease the PGs. Let's come in here and let's get these creased up. Just a little bit more like that. Just something else. And then you know what? Let's crease that as well. That. And that. Now we have something a little bit more like that. And then now maybe this is why I maybe would insert another edge loop. And another edge loop. Just have that cleaned up a little bit. Okay, let's just say something like this. Okay, now, as far as the project primitive goes. Okay, so I was just catching up on your questions. All right, I'm going to take a drink of water real quick. Forgive me. All right, so now let's do something down here in the bottom. Let's have some fun here. And in fact, let's even Q mesh polygroup flat island. Let's put this one in instead. So it sits like that. And I'm even going to say, let's clip the bottom to be a little different. Let's clip the bottom, have a little bit different type of silhouette profile to it. Something, a bigger flatted surface in essence. And let's use slide. And then slide this out so it's something more like that. Okay. And I'm going to also insert edge loops here, so I just have some topology of fun. Okay, just some more topo in there. And I don't want those creased. Something like that. Okay, so now I got something like that. I am going to say, let's apply this. And then I'm going to delete the lower, because you can't have subdivision levels with project primitive. So now I have this. Okay, it's a little more complex of a piece. Now let's get into project primitive. So I'm going to click on this, and then we're going to go to the project primitive. And what this is, okay, to start wrapping your head around this, I agree, this is not necessarily the easiest thing for you to grasp and get, But once you really see the power and see the things that you can do with it, I think this is a very underused feature that we could really take advantage of big time. But I get why also. Makes sense. It's something I'd like for us to take a look at. Something continually on my list. Flying saucers, right, Chris? So, look at this as a, let's see, let me put this in the right way for you easily. There is a global settings, and then there's local settings. And it's called project primitive because what we're doing is we're taking in a primitive, like in this case a sphere, and projecting it as if you were doing a project all. That's the easiest way I can explain it to you. And deforming the mesh based upon a sphere. So this sphere is projecting and giving like a rounded part and a rounded part there. So if you look, there are sets of cones here, here, and then there's sets of cones here and here. And if you look, there are two boxes. There's this box, which is in essence a perfect cube. And then there's this box, which is not, it is a perfectly rectangular cube. So the big box, if you see, is actually the bounding box of the flying saucer. Okay? And the perfect square is the primitive that we're projecting in there. That's what that is. So I want to now manipulate the primitive that's in the middle. And there are particular settings for just the primitive. So what I mean by that is if we decide, let's do new surface. Okay, and then now as I pull it off, you'll see that there is no more projection happening. This is now just its own sphere, and hopefully this helps more. And you can clearly see there are two bounding boxes. One being the object that we're projecting into, one being the projecting object itself. Think of almost as this, if you want to, think of it as like two subtools. This is the subtool on the top. This is the subtool on the bottom that we're going to project. This is going to get that information, so, right? So this is our source. Okay? So that's how this is working. Sculpt Corner, we're seeing. I'm going to try. My problem is my schedule's changed drastically, big time in the last 2 years. Right, so if you look, these cones and these cones have to deal with the primitive itself. It's not necessarily like a global portions, right? So if I come back down and make this be this purple one, see, not be out, bring it all the way back in, see the pink cone comes back, that's your blend. So if I say, okay, now let's do this, where this now sits, it needs to be inside that bounding box. And you can have different things by where the gizmo's sitting. So if you're pulling the gizmo way out more, the furthest you pull, right, it's just doing something like that. If you push in, and eventually, when this gizmo gets inside the other bounding box, it's now being a projection. So if I pull it outside the bounding box, it turns into like a subtraction in a way. And then when I pull, make sure that the gizmo is going inside the main box, you are now projecting. So now I say, okay, do I want a sphere? So I can say, you know what, I don't want a sphere, and maybe I want to play with the blending. So the pink is my blend. Do I want less of a sphere? Or do I, no, just give me straight up a sphere. Right? And then I can change the size of this. And you can see now we have this. And I can say, you know what, let me pull it out, and now I have a perfect spherical shape projecting. Or, you know what, I want this on the bottom instead. Right? I want it there. Right? And you can see this is, think about it almost as if it's a live boolean. But the benefit is, I can do stuff like this. I can make it kind of a different shape. I can watch everything change. I can do this. I can say, you know what, let's make it bigger. But you know what, here, on either side, I would prefer that. So these white dots are clips. So if you do one, push it in, you get this. If you hold the shift key, I can kind of clip them as a unit on opposite sides of that first dot. Right? So this is where this project primitive starts to come in very handy. Okay, so let's do this. Okay, I'm going to go bigger. And now I don't want the primitive to be on the top. So that's where this white dot comes into play. I'm going to say let's crop it down so that the sphere does not affect the top half. So this is, we've clipped it. This is almost taking, think about this as we're taking multiple features or multiple brushes inside of ZBrush and putting it in one thing, right? So you think that white dot, think of it as a clipping brush. Think of it, that's exactly what it is. It's a clipping brush. But now you're clipping where you can do it after, you can keep adjusting the clip in essence and seeing which one do I like, and then that's what I like. Okay, and now you've got a projection, like almost like a projectile, but we're using primitives to do it. And then you're having all these other controls. Okay, so I am going to now say I don't want a sphere. Thanks, Leonard. That means a lot, man. Glad you're enjoying it. And saying, again, if you remember, the big square is about the primitive. Okay, it's about the main local primitive itself. So I want to change this. And so these cones over here are allowing us to change things. If you scroll over, we'll give you what this is. So this is symmetry. This is what type of primitive. And then this is a modifier of the primitive. So the default one can become 3 primitives and then obviously a blending between. As you can see, it can become a perfect sphere. If I pull this out, it becomes now squared. If I pull it all the way in, it becomes more of a pyramid or diamond shape. So obviously, if I'm going in between 0.5 and that 0 mark, I'm getting a blend between those. If I go above 0.5, then you start to get more of a square shape like this. Okay, and then now I can say, okay, I want this to be there. All right, I do want to blend it a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to say, let's start playing with this in a different way. Like that. Maybe, do I want that blend? Maybe more like this. And now what I would rather do is this shape, I want to play with some other elements. Okay, and so that's where we're going to get into now the global ones. So I can say, hey, over here, this is globally an opacity to start changing it. And now we'll look from the front, right? We're getting a little bit of a, I want to live more in that world. So I'm getting a little bit of a taper there. Then I'm going to come through here, give that to be a little bit taper. Then the shape, I'm going to start putting it on an angle. And if you look at the top, it's also doing stuff at the top that's actually a nice little happy mistake. But I can, again, clip it and say, okay, I can keep that portion of it if I want. Or, see, there's a point where it is going to clip parts. So that I want to make sure I can probably do something more like that. Okay, and then I want to size it up. I want to live more in this world now. Kind of liking that. And now I want finding kind of what I want in here. Yep. And let me just bring it up a little bit. And I'll start clipping it. There we go. Okay, something like that. Right? So this blending is only happening because of project primitive, where I'm kind of getting a shape. So if we continue this thought process, right, let's get back into this. You're going to have other controls like over here. I want to play with the tessellation. So you can tessellate down or up the part that's being projected, right? So there's less or more topology, right? So it's holding that a lot better. Then I'm going to say, okay, I like that. Let's accept that, right? That's good. Now let's do something else here. Let's go ahead and let's bring this up. Let's do over and let's make it symmetrical. All right, and then a lot smaller. Okay, and I don't like this shape anymore, so I'm going to go to shape 2. And now I have 2 cones. And so now I have a little bit of different manipulation that I can do here. So as I have multiple profiles, so like I can go this direction, which is this cone. I want to stay more like that. I want it to be really rounded through here. Okay. Then let's blend this a little bit differently. Okay, and then let's do this, bring it way down, and do this, and then let's just make it stick out more. Let's play with the blending. I don't like that much blending happening. Kind of live more in that world. Let's make sure we're clipping. Let's go. I want to go this way a little bit. Maybe not so much. So this is remembering every setting that I had also set. So this is something that's important for me, is I'm using the other parts here, right, that we were playing with. So I want to blend it a little bit more. And actually, I'm going to get with the density and less dense. And let's clip it even a little bit more. Something like that. And then I'm going to clip it this direction a little bit. Something like that. Okay, like that more. Let's keep that wide out like that. Let's get rid of the displacement. I don't like the displacement. I prefer not to have that. Okay, and then density. Yeah. And then let's look at the opacity again. I'm going to play with the opacity here. And the opacity in this direction. Like that. Like that opacity. Okay. And then say, I like that I can accept it. Right? And then now, I can continue this process. Right? And doing what I want. So, I have symmetry, I have radial symmetry, so this is kind of what you do with it, and then this is where you're turning radial symmetry and what symmetry axis that you want. And this is how you would start to work with this, right? And then you can, saving, then you can reset, right? Full reset, and then now you're back to a sphere, and now you got a sphere again. Now I can say I'm going to bulge it out there on the bottom. Just the bottom half. Let's make it maybe a little bit more in that realm instead. And then have it only touch a portion of this. Something more like that. Right? So you can get some really unique stuff. Right? Like if I want up here to have just some kind of little soft raised surface. Okay? We'll go back. Okay? And what I mean by that is we're going to go here. Then we're going to bring this over. And what we're going to also do is let's turn on some symmetry. Okay. I want it to be more of a rounded cube shape. Definitely not as big. And let's go a little bit closer here. Not this big. Okay, something around there. A lot smaller. I can say let's make it a little bit wider. Something like that. I can say, all right, let's rotate it. I don't want it happening on the bottom. See, like that little soft, and then now you can also this, right? Do you want to play with the opacity here? Do you want to play with the blending? So you can do something more like that. I can size this down. Obviously raising it up and down is going to play a different role. Now you can kind of, I'll just put a little bit of a bump in there. Then I can say, let's make the dot and make it have a flat top. Right, something like that. It's subtle, but you can do it. Does the project primitive work with array mesh? No, it does not. But project primitive does have symmetry, radial symmetry. Okay, so what I mean by that is we can let's go back to the beginning. Let's just stick with the sphere. Okay, and then let's put here, we'll keep it like this so you guys can visually see it. Okay. So right over here is radial, this white cone. So I can say I want, let's say 8. And if I move it off, then I got to say, you know, what symmetry axis do you want? And in this case, I want Y. And then now, right, this is all happening on here. And right now it'll start projecting in and giving me this. And then now my tessellation, I probably want to get up a little bit. But now I have these little dots everywhere that I can manipulate and play with. Like there is this ability for you. Right, and I can say I don't want as much blending. Right, so these are all going. Is this kind of what you were thinking and hoping for? Who was asking the question about the this? Oh, this is one of these moments. The Lisa needs braces moments. Lisa needs braces. Who was asking me? I don't know where it went. Okay, but obviously the benefit of this, everybody, is again, I can accept this, and I can even build upon this and say, well, now I want to go with more squared. I want it to be really long, and I want it to live there. I also want it to be a lot skinnier. And now you can have something like this. Like this is the point of project primitive, is doing things like this, right? I can go a lot more wider. Maybe have it go there. And then now I also want it to have a little bit of opacity change in it. Like this is pretty powerful, right? To be able to do just something unique, something different, right? And then you can play with this. Maybe I want the opposite direction. Maybe I want something like that instead, right? So then this is what I'm starting to get. So this is a way. So I saw a question about ZModeler on iPad. Marcine, we just announced today. ZModeler will be on the iPad April of this year. There's a video if you want to see ZModeler in action on the iPad. There's a video on our Instagram, which is also on our Facebook and on our X. So here I will bring over our Instagram into my screen. So this video right here. This is the video that you want. Oh, I refreshed it. This one. So you can watch this if you like. Here, let me also. It's easier to see. So ZModeler is on there, as you can see. It is coming. And in this video, we announced April of this year. You'll be able to get ZMolder on the iPad. Right? So if you're not already following our Instagram or anything, I would recommend that because we tend to use it a lot for announcements and things. We always, any major announcement that we're doing for ZBrush World, we 100% put it on our socials, right? Our Instagrams, our Facebooks, and our X. Still difficult to say it. So this is a big deal, right? This is something that you guys have been waiting for. There was a lot of work done. It wasn't easy, guys. It wasn't just taking the brush and putting it on the iPad. That wasn't going to work. Okay, there was a lot of stuff that had to, for sure. Okay, so I think it was Comics Legend. Were you asking? No, it was Chris. Chris, you were asking about this Project Primitive. Does this make more sense for you now? Is it a little bit more understood of what you can do and how you can work with it, and in what way you might want to work with it? Is it making sense for you now? Like, this is the kind of stuff now where I want to go now switch to sculpting. So I would say I'm starting to see like a character in here a little bit, for sure. Brush trim dynamic, start seeing, just trimming up this surface. I'm starting to see something in here, right? Or I'm even seeing masking this out through here. And then I don't want it. Oops. I have to switch my symmetry. I would do this cleanup. I'm just starting to see something in here. Right, so obviously this is probably something where I want to start using Dynamesh, probably, so I can get cleaner topology. Just seeing some stuff in there starting to appear for me, design-wise. That's for sure. Yes. I would probably use a lot more dense mesh on this, for sure. With this brush, it's kind of just quick design thought process here for me. See maybe some stuff that I want to catch, like something in here. Clip it. Start doing. Just start having some fun through here. Kind of starting to seeing something more like a hard surface head or a character or something like that is what I'm starting to see. Let's use this is bad topology. Oh yes, I'm seeing it. It's starting to come together. The chisel brush with Sculptris Pro. No, you can't use it. This is what you're asking. This. No, you can't use it with that. This particular brush is using the layer base type, and the layer base type can't be used with Sculptris Pro. No, all I have to do, yes, Chris, all you have to do is create something for sure. Yeah. Good tint. Paul and Service, when you add an alpha map and make a mask on the mesh, and then you squeeze inflate, it can be very torn surface. How to overcome that? It's a great question. It's going to come down to your topology, right? And how much topology you're doing and what you want. So let me think. I'm trying to think if I have something. I do. Okay, I do have something. All right. Let me load something to solve this for us all. to kind of, let me get a model that can kind of answer this question for you. This is where I do music. We're doing it all for the users. Yes. Yes. Okay, let's load this one. Okay. Let's definitely not have any materials on. Let's just stick with this. We don't need the head. Don't need this. Okay, so let's look at just this. This is an old model that maybe one of these days I'll finish. Probably not, knowing me. Alright. So, the amount of topology you have is going to be very crucial. Okay, so as I divide this up, right, this chest plate's now at 8.9 million. Right, so we'll solo this out. So right now, I'm using surface noise, right, to give me this pattern. So this is an alpha that I'm using to give me that surface noise ability. Okay, so when it comes to masking, you can mask by noise, and then it's going to look, and now I have this masked noise portion, right? And I can inverse it and do whatever I want. So in this case, I would probably take all of this and mask that completely off. I would take this, mask that off, right? And then the back, I would also take this and mask that off. So the only thing I have is this, right? And then now, inflation-wise, that you're doing is now you're just inflating here, right? And let's hide the mask. This. So I'm assuming this kind of, it's not the cleanest, even with the 9 million-ish, right? And number one, the image isn't that clean, in all honesty, okay? And then, so now I can undo. So one thing you do is, I would say blur it, right? Maybe a little bit. And then when you, here, I'll hide the mask. When we inflate, now you're going to get a lot smoother, cleaner inflation, right? Because the edges aren't so harsh. They're a lot nicer, right? So you can do this. And so this is why, if you notice here, you're getting a little bit of a pillowing or like a chamfering right there. It's because there is a mask that I blurred, right? So really, also, to get to this point, this is the difference. So if I did this, that's the difference between mask by noise. This is looking at the noise and then doing a mask. So see, this gets left alone and then the noise is on here. So what I want is, this is my mask. I want the opposite. So that's what this unmasked is. So now it's only looking at the masked portion, and then it's using the what I have there, right? And then now I can inverse it, and now everything's automatically masked off. So that's the difference between the two. Okay, so there is this approach that you could do, where it's just about try blurring the mask a little bit, getting enough topology. There is one thing that you can try. I don't think it's going to do very well for this pattern, personally, but I could say let's use this, and I'm actually going to sharpen it a little bit and then look at the sharpening of that. So I'm holding Control and Alt, and to just sharpen up that mask a little bit. And that's the only thing. Then I can get rid of my subdivision levels. Right, I don't know how long this is going to take. This is something I just in my head, popped in my head to try. And say, okay, let's take this now. Okay, and then let's go into our edge loop and say edge loop by the mask of the border. So ZBrush is now going to analyze this close to 9 million mesh. Look where there's a mask, and wherever vertex points have a perfect 100% mask, we're literally going to slice that for you. Right, is what we're looking to do. And then now, if we clear our mask, I actually have a polygroup of that pattern. And then there is, if I went and now selected this, okay, so the polygroup itself, you can see it's slicing. It's not perfectly clean, but you could, in deformation, be light about this. But this polish by groups, I might do like a 1 polish And then maybe, okay, got a little bit better. And then now slowly I can say repeat to active. And it's cleaning it up slowly. Then I can say, you know what, let's go a little bit stronger here. Let's go a 10. Right, so here we'll just go so visually you guys can see it. I'm going to go all the way. Right, so this got all cleaner in essence. So what I have is that, right? And then you can do, because it's all sliced geometry, you can take advantage of this, right? By doing other things. Number one, you could probably come down here and do an extract. Right, and then you're getting an extracted surface of that. And then it's a cleaner version of that. That's ridiculous. So the thickness is way too high. Do extract. Still too high for me. I don't like it that high. I'm gonna go, whoops, 0.001. What else could you use? You could use panel loops here. So the benefit of this is it's its own topology now, right? So you can do whatever you want with this, right? And you think about, if I turn this back on and then turn this back on, let's see, what piece do I have? There we go. Right, so now look at that. That is way better than just trying to get the noise to then push the surface. I just made a new surface. And if you think about what we only really care about is the front plate. So we could delete all the other back plate and even get to this to a higher quality count probably. But now I have that where it's a lot more of a cleaner surface. I can now manipulate just this part, right? So this is only 2.4 million. Now I can have maybe different things. I can say, hey, let's hide this. Let's hide this. Let's do a edge loop. Now I've got an edge loop. Let's hide this. And then let's say, actually, we probably for this, we don't even want to put an edge loop. We want this. Then geometry, again, edge loop. I'm going to say not crisp. And then let's displace it out. Whoa, way too much. That's not enough. That's close. I kind of dig that. I kind of like what's going there. Right, so it's got a beveling there, right? So you see all that. So you see that's going to catch differently in the lighting now. It's got a little bit of it has some beveling in there for me. Right, so very, very different thought process here that you can use. But because it's a separate piece of geometry too, the rendering itself, or if you're going into an engine, obviously I could combine all these and just do a remesh and do normal maps. If you're going that route, displacement, I can do the same thing. But if we render this, because it's a raised own surface, like the shadows are just going to even be beautiful of what we're going to get there. Because now this is full-fledged raised surface. It's not bumping out the surface. Does that make sense? Listen, that was freaking a cape of a tangent right there. That was a tangent. Vitali, which hopefully am I saying your name correct, please forgive me if I'm not. Is that kind of what you're thinking? Chris, that's great to read. I'm glad I was able to help you some way. This is why I want to get back to streaming again, really hone in. So I'm going to try and do some projects specific with us too in these streams too, the way I used to. So this is a thought. So again, I will also do iPad stuff in here. So if you guys have iPad questions, I can connect my iPad, no problem. We can answer those questions too within the iPad. It's not just a desktop stream. We're going to be streaming everything, iPad and desktop. Of course, happy to help. Happy to share the time with you. So I'm planning, again, I stream on Fridays is when my streaming date is. So my streaming date is always for me. I'm in the Pacific Coast side of the world, and in America. So it's 11 a.m. my time to pretty much now. It's always going to be about a 2-hour stream because after that, everybody wants to get on with their evening, their Friday. Hey, thank you, Fatal. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. I'm glad that I've been able to help you in any shape, way, or form. It's really my honor. It's my pleasure. We're all a community. We're all together. Even though I work on ZBrush and work for Maxon, I'm an artist too. And I was first a lover of ZBrush, and that's how I got into it. I taught it to myself and just wanted to sculpt and do things. So this is a big thing for me. Rodolfo, no need necessary for that, but thank you. So I stream again the last Friday of February. I'm not streaming next Friday. So if you want to come back and join me in 2 weeks from today, I'll be streaming again. I'm not available next week, but the following week I will be. It will always be Fridays at this time when I do stream. Keep an eye on our schedule as always. Rodolfo's in here right now. He's a part of the team. He'll be streaming as well on a regular basis, along with Ian and along with Daisuke. So you guys have multiple streams where you can communicate with us, see where we're going firsthand of certain things. So I would really encourage you as much as you can to join us. We'd love to have you. It's really exciting to be back for me. I love this. I miss this. My schedule is just a little bit of craziness going on. So it's fun to make some artwork again, just play again in ZBrush. It's the child in me. We're all here trying to learn something. All right, any other questions from anybody before we call this stream done? Didn't get to go diving deep into my X-Wing, but I was trying to catch you guys up on some of the techniques I used on where I'm at. So I'm hoping to get that finished because I'm hoping to 3D print it. And then I've already got my TIE Fighter, which is somewhere over here. And I want to make like a full battle scene in my office here above me. So that's kind of why I'm doing this as well. Just having some fun. So Rudy, no, we're a subscription only company now. So if you pay for a full year of ZBrush on the subscription, it'll automatically renew though. So then, yeah, you would keep it. It would renew. But if you cancel the subscription, let's say you get a 1-year subscription, okay, and then say 4 months down the road you cancel it. You can cancel it, but you'll still have those 8 months to use ZBrush because you paid for a year. But when the renewal comes around, it won't work anymore. It won't renew. ZBrush won't launch for you anymore. You're not paying for the subscription anymore. But you have obviously monthly subscriptions. You have annual subscriptions. The iPad version has its own subscription pricing if you only want the iPad version as well. So the iPad version is $10 a month, and I'm giving you US dollars. Look up here. US dollars. Like $9.99 per month or $89.99 for the year, and then the desktop version. But this is the thing; it's not just the desktop version. The desktop version is $3.99 annually or $49 a month. But you guys don't just get ZBrush Desktop; it is giving you ZBrush Desktop and iPad and Redshift. So if you get the $49 one or the $399 one, $399 one, you get an activation for your iPad of ZBrush, you get an activation for your desktop of ZBrush, and you get Redshift inside of ZBrush. It'll be the CPU version, but you get Redshift. In essence, you get the Redshift renderer inside of ZBrush. It's just the company has decided we're not doing perpetual anymore. It's just what the company has decided. There are no more perpetual licenses. Sorry, I know you guys want perpetual. I get it. Some of you want perpetual, but unfortunately, Maxon as a company are subscription. Okay? So this is what you can do as far as that goes for your question about the year. Okay? Any other questions from you guys before I call it again? Done? If not, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to jump in here. We had a couple tangents for sure. I think went really well for us. That was fun. Again, I will be back in 2 weeks, streaming on a Friday, and keep an eye on our schedules. It's in there when we're streaming. So we update the schedule near the end of every month for the following month. So right now it has all of February in there. So in a week or so, we'll have the March schedule in there. And for those that did not see, we announced today that ZModeler's coming on the iPad April of this year. Oh, any personal projects in the works? Yeah. Yes, I do have a couple personal projects in the works. I started on the one that I've always wanted to do, which was doing a really, well, he's based on this Darth Vader as a samurai, but doing more of like a samurai look to him. So I started on that one, and then I started cleaning up the one mech that I just started designing like I don't know 8 years ago. I decided, I'm going to go start looking at him again and start playing with him. So I started playing with him again. So I'm trying to see which one where my juices are going, and then going from there. So those are the two games that I've started toying and playing with. So I do have a personal one that I'm working on, but it's in the beta of ZBrush, so I can't show it to you. You'll be able to see it once we launch in April. Then I can show you what I've been working on in there. All right. Cool. Oh, you did do one, James? You did one too? Love to see it sometimes. Love to see it. You got a link? That's all. Yeah, I've seen a couple. It makes sense. He's based off of Samurai, obviously, right? So it's just something I wanted to do, and I kind of, as always, wanted to 3D print it and make it up. I wanted to turn it into like a table light, like a lamp, and then have it also light up. But I have an idea of what I want lit up in certain ways, so that's why. But as always, life gets in the way, and work gets in the way. I don't know if mine will be any better. Blood Rapture, to your question about PBRs. Well, Redshift technically is PBR based, right? So the materials that are Redshift materials inside of ZBrush do have a PBR based. Obviously, you're going to want probably the texture ability of that. So writing on the wall, I can never say no to anything because we always shift and change. We're organic when we develop ZBrush. It is something that is on the list, though. It is something that we will be hopefully looking into at some point, seeing how we can get you guys PBR materials in real time for you inside of ZBrush, the way you would, to your question, the way you might want it. So it is something that is on the list of thought process of what we can do. So that's all I can tell you. I can't tell you much else about any kind of other development items or anything like that, but I can tell you, yes, it's on the list of thoughts that we can look into. Why does the image sometimes fly off when you try to blur a mask on a mesh that consists of 80 million vertexes? What do you mean it flies off? If it's a mask, it's on the model itself, if I'm understanding this. And then when you blur it, what do you mean by fly off? Can you expand on that question for me a little bit more, Vitali? I'm a little lost in the weeds, making sure I understand what you're asking, so I can make sure I can answer the question for you. And especially if you have like a video or something showing this, that would be super helpful, because then I can take a look at it or any imagery. If you want to email me, you can email it to me. It's being deleted. Oh, you mean it's shutting down? Like it's shutting down, and then you have to relaunch? It's a lot of 80 million. It is a lot of calculation happening to blur a mask, because we got to analyze those 80 million vertex points, figure out the gradient of that blur happening between that click and also. I could see it if that's what you mean, that ZBrush is shutting down on you. I could see that being a possibility. It could depend upon your resources on your system, maybe as well. If you have a particular model, this is where this would be very, very, very helpful. I would strongly encourage you to make a support ticket if you have a model that you can share with that. That way we can use that model in our development cycle on the development side. That's not a version you guys get, that we can look at what the code's doing. We might be able to catch and see something that's happening if it is shutting down when you're trying to do that and fix it, right? Unless we have that, guys, you're talking billions of line of code, right? We can't just go start poking and playing. It's better if we have a repeatable action, a repeatable model. A, we can pinpoint maybe the problem. Two, if we think we've pinpointed and solved the problem, we can then use that mesh also as a test to see if it solved the problem too. So if that's what you're trying to get to, so I would say go that route. If you want, where's my thing? Okay, here let me respond with my email. But I would say even a support ticket, because you're going to get our support team for ZBrush answering it for you. And if there's something complex, obviously I'm the person they're going to ask. So, and then I'm the person they're going to give the stuff to, being the one that's involved in the development. So, but if you want, although I will say the caveat of my email now, so that you guys have the email address, it is super difficult for me to look at emails on a daily basis. I'm not going to lie. I'm usually behind now by like a week or 2 weeks, honestly. There's just so much going on for us. Again, you guys don't know everything yet, and there's stuff we've got planned out for you guys for ZBrush that I'm super excited about in this next year and 2, 3 years. So there's a lot of moving parts for me now. So I don't get to look at my emails every single day and be in them as long as I used to, which I apologize for. It's just the nature now of me being the other things I got going on. So, but if you do email me, I will get to you eventually. I won't skip over you. I will answer you. Hopefully I can get to you as fast as possible. That is fine. If you want to email me a model or something, that would be really helpful. If you have a model that you can share with us, that would be great. But if you just want to go through to our support site, that's always what I would go through. If you're having an issue or you're having something that's happening to you, I strongly recommend making a ticket on our support site. That way our team can look at it, go back and forth with you as well and ask questions, figure some things out. And then hopefully too, if we see some, oh yeah, there is an issue there, then they can pass that over to us on the development side, and we can then add it and take a look at it and see if we can resolve it. It sounds like to me you're running into a resource thing. It sounds like because it's 80 million and it's trying to do a mask, the resources would probably need to be pretty high on the system to make sure all that cycling of information can be processed and done. So I don't know. It might be. I don't know unless we have the model. So that's why it'd be huge for us. Okay. Hopefully that helps answer a little bit of that question. Doesn't give you the exact answer, but hopefully it helps you a bit. Okay. Anything else? One more time. Any future plans for parenting and subgroups? So for the folder system, I would say, yeah, it's something I would like to take a look at eventually. I have some other things higher on the list than that, though. I will be honest with you. It's on the list, but it's not super high on the list, but it's on the list. There are some other things that are above that for me. And I think once you see what I'm saying, once we get some of the stuff out that I know we're doing, you'll probably get why I maybe don't have the subfolders all the way at the top of the list. There's some other stuff that we got going on. So, and again, guys, I'll try to be as transparent as I can with you guys when we do these streams for sure. There's obviously some stuff I can't share with you, but I'll try to be what I can transparency-wise with you. All right. Well, I thank the group of you that stuck around, listened to me ramble off and sit here and do some sculpting in ZBrush. Hopefully a lot of this stuff has been very helpful for you. And then getting going on that. Sculpting for hair, I would really highly recommend. So I would just make a very quick base mesh for the hair and then start using some just simple, like looking at it in a different sense. It depends. So I would assume because you're trying to do something for 3D printing or sculptural hair, I would say like it's just grabbing even something like a sphere, right? And then just think about it in chunks. Think about it in blocks of information, right? So this is in essence the start of the hair, right? So then obviously I would say this is where I also like to use move infinite. Okay, and then now I can start moving this around, and I know infinite, it's going to be happening on both sides, right? So this is just, I'm looking at this side, and then I can say, okay, let me push this in, let me push this around, and then redynamesh, right? So it's really about just quickly getting some kind of base that you want, right? And I'm just using smoothing, kind of change that brown line, right? And it's just getting something pretty simple. Let's switch back to that move. Right, and then just start redynameshing that. This is where you could probably, if you wanted to, this is where you could use the snake hook. Where are you? Snake cactus, snake hook. Okay, and so when you're doing this, you can actually pull on it, and it would actually follow the surface. So what I'm doing is I'm holding Alt to do that. So I can start doing this kind of a thing, and see it's following the surface. So it's got some nice mutton chops now. Okay, and then now you start thinking about it. I like to use the Damien standard, right? To just kind of just start blocking out a simple hair, right? And then you can see even if you're just being really quick about it, you can make some starting to look like hair. And then I would encourage the Alt key, right? So I would say, okay, here's the part line. So I need to dig into this. There's my part line for the hair. Something like that, right? And so that's the part line, redynamesh. And now I can make it swoop in a little bit if I want to instead. Right, just follow a flow, get a reference so you're following a flow, right? And then this would be a way to go. Okay, so one thing that I would also encourage you is having some fun with some other brushes. So for example, the Damien standard, right? I've done this in the past where you're making this, right? To kind of put in some information in here. But I found it also could be interesting with the curve mode on. I'll put both my bends on. I'm going to put size on, and I'm going to change this graph to be a little something more like this, kind of like more of a bell. And then you draw a curve, and if you pull in a curve, then you can get like that, like you're tapering on both sides. So then I can say, as I can do this, right, and then I can cut in, and then do stuff like that. Right, so if I did that here, right, I could do a nice swooping curve, and I'll just pull on that curve. And then there, you've got that hair particle, right? And then another one, hair particle, tap, another one, and then another one, and then redynamesh it, right? So this is a way you could go, too. I've done that. Oh, you have the Superman chair too? The Secret Labs? Yeah, I love this thing. Super comfy. Okay, there you go. Hopefully that helps. So again, you gotta hold the Alt key and then use, it's gotta be a separate sub tool for that snake hook brush, and then it'll follow the surface. It's not gonna keep following forever, so you gotta keep it works best with Sculptress Pro, actually. So if you're gonna do that snake hook thing, with this, it would be best to turn on Sculptress Pro. So when you are doing the Alt key in here, right, it's best to work on that with that. Well, right, and then that way you're getting more topology as you're pulling on it. And get rid of that. Right, there's that kind of thing too. Which Snake Hook is good for that, right? Pulling out points of interest. A lot of people just use the move brush, and then you turn on AccuCurve in ZBrush. They turn on this, and then now it's like little points, right? This kind of a thing. A lot of people will do that. I'm not as active on social media anymore. I'm trying to. This is something I need to do this year, is trying to put the artwork that I can try and do this year and put it on my Instagram. So I'm going to make a conscious effort, James, this year to try and be better with that. On to another based on view. Oh, that you're thinking of Matchmaker probably. KD15, you're probably thinking about Matchmaker. Most likely. Right? So that, are you thinking about... we don't need that bullet on. Where are you again? Where did we put you? No. Demo projects. Let's see if it's in here. Nope. Is it a tool? Other tools. There you go. I think what you're thinking about is this. Right, where this is a pattern piece, and then this is the guitar, and now you want it to match. Right, I'm going to turn off Sculptures Pro. Is this what you're referring to? That? And then obviously now this is matching the guitar. So obviously it's good for low. Again, it's camera plane dependent. Is that what you were asking? KD15? Thanks, Edward. Okay. There is no bridge with Rhizome in ZBrush. No, that's something they would have to do. We don't write any Go Z bridges. We haven't done that for years. It's on them to write the bridge to do a Go Z with their software. The only ones we do now are our own products. And then we're still supporting the Maya Max one, 3D Studio Max. But any other application that wants to make some kind of bridge with ZBrush, they have to do it on their side. Hey Paul, I work with a lot of sub-tools when I'm brainstorming ideas for a character that I am creating. Is there any plans to add folders and eyeball visibility toggle in the N subtool pop-up menu? No plans. No, I can't think of anything, but it's a good thought. It's a good thought. Good question, Chris. I'll put that in the list and see about thinking about stuff like that. Definitely. He's referring to this, everybody. So if I load a project, oops, and then you hit N, it's like the brush palette in essence. So you can actually show me all the things that start with B, and then you only see it. Spacebar will reset it. Show me just the things that start with W. So it's a way to see your subtools, what you're actually clicking. The N key, as in what's the country I'm thinking of? Okay, so N as in Nebraska. I don't know, Nancy. So what you're looking at is this button right here, which now all of a sudden is interesting. It's broken. This is what you're clicking. Is this right here? You're clicking that button when you hit N, but interesting that it's now not working. Oh, look at that! Found a bug. Now can I repeat it? Is there a... wait, okay, hold on. Is there a brush to move only on the surface? Like if you need to geo to stay identical, but just nudge the topology around? You could use ZModeler to do that. Obviously, you could use move or smooth and just make the Z intensity really low, but there's no particular brush that's just kind of like a relaxing of the topology and moving around without changing the form or the silhouette. Except for like you could use sliding in ZModeler to do that. Yes, you can customize your shortcuts for the brush palette. So when you hit the B key, right, and so you hit M for move, you can see that all these now have the little icons above them, the orange ones. Now if you do the Control Alt and tap on any one of these, you can change that third click icon. But BMV should always work. That's kind of like more of a hard-coded thing. So if you're not having BMV work anymore, did you change? I don't know if did you change the shortcut or something like that, but it is possible, right? So over here you can see the V is for the M. So if you hold down Control and Alt and tap on this, and then the next letter you hit. So let's do it. If I do this, hold on, just shot over. Sorry. Look at the trees. Coming on. Okay, so let's see. Yep. Let's see. Maybe if we found something. Maybe we found something here. Maybe. Okay, so again here I'll go BM, and then this is the V. So Control and Alt, and then now at the very top it says make any key. So I don't know. Let's use 7. So you see now 7 is now the hotkey for my for mine. So ZM. So you can see the number 7 right there. And let's do it over here. So it's there. So you see the 7? So you can do that. Just make sure you store that if you always want it to be there. Like, you got to go into your preferences and go to hotkeys and then hit store, and that'll store it on your system that you're sitting at. If you want to save it, that gives you a file that you can load it wherever you want. Okay? Okay. All right. All right, guys. Unfortunately, I got to get going. I'd love to stay some more, but I appreciate you all taking some time to be with me. Hopefully, I see you all again in 2 weeks, and even more people. Let the people know Crazy Paul's back on ZBrush Live streaming. So I'm going to think about some projects I can work on, and take a look at that video on our Instagram or Facebook or our I can't get away from the word Twitter, X, showing ZModeler in action on the iPad. All right, everyone. Have a delicious evening, day, great weekend. It's been an honor.